Merci. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? It's a good session, isn't it? How many of you are interested in your own health? Okay, so I want to talk to you about actually the biggest paradigm shift in healthcare in 200 years, and then talk about why that's of interest, or why is sovereign cloud of interest. So digital health transformation and the sovereign cloud. Digital is certainly the raw material for transforming global healthcare. We've made remarkable progress in 200 years, and I'll tell you about that. But cloud is really democratizing both innovation and service provision, and I was delighted to hear Laurent talk about innovation as a service, as a new model. So if there's one thing I want you to remember from my talk, it's 6 words. We're going to boil down sort of the transformation of global healthcare, which is really complex, into 6 words. I call it stay left, shift left, 10x. So stay left is about keeping well people well, or if you happen to have a chronic condition or need rehab, that you're treated best of all from home. Many of us in the room probably have a chronic health care condition. Some of us know about it, some of us don't know about it. 70% of all deaths come from chronic conditions that are neither detected or actually are improperly managed. Shift left's about moving patients as quickly as possible from a hospital setting to community setting to home setting. And 10x is the notion that when we apply digital to healthcare, we're seeing this repeated pattern: 10 times better, 10 times cheaper, 10 times faster, 10 times earlier. So I work at the Innovation Value Institute in Maynooth University, originally where the original university was founded in 1795. At the Innovation Value Institute, we work across many disciplines, trying to bring the benefits of digital transformation to everybody. So 150 years ago, Abraham Lincoln said the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to stormy present. And I think this is so, it's even more truer today, and particularly in healthcare. So there's a lot of dogma, like the doctor knows best. Well, that's going to change. Right now, the dogma is, and certainly in Ireland where I come from, the health policy is to treat people in the most expensive place at the last possible moment, and that's the acute hospital, and that's going to change. But to recognize we've made remarkable progress in the last 200 years. For 300,000 years, average life expectancy was around 29.7 years. So if we were here 200 years ago, most of us in the room wouldn't be here because we'd be dead. So we've more than doubled life expectancy, and that's because of the discovery of penicillin, the invention of technologies like stents, the massive developments in radiology. And global population has increased by a factor of 10. Amazing. We should all be grateful. However, what has got us to here now won't get us to where we need to go. So here are just a couple of headlines. It's not just the NHS, Europe's healthcare crisis, the New York Times, doctors aren't burned out from overwork. We're demoralized by our health system. There's more and more demand. The costs are going up. And many clinicians are actually leaving because they're burned out or they're just demoralized. Great article, Time, the coming collapse of the US healthcare system. Oh, and by the way, we now have more people over 65 than under 5 in the world, and we have massive turnover problems. How many of our businesses could work with 100% turnover every 5 years? Well, many acute hospitals are dealing with this. I know I'm working with one hospital in Dublin. There isn't a single Irish nurse working in the hospital anymore because the conditions and the morale is so bad. And there are so many committed and dedicated and excellent clinicians, but they're working with Victorian systems. So what I'm suggesting and others is a new way of fixing healthcare and getting us ready for the 21st century and beyond, and we call that stay left, shift left, 10x. Where did this idea come from? Well, in the early 2000s, people started to talk about software development. If you find a bug very early in the design, it costs about $80 to fix, but if you find it when it's in production, it costs 10 times more, almost $8,000. And similarly in healthcare, and this is a chart for skin cancer, if we find skin cancer very early, it costs 1/20 of the cost if we find it very late. In Ireland, for example, 1,500 people die from skin cancer every year. But by using a solution, digital dermatology, I'm going to share, we think we can get that reduced by a factor of 10x from 1,500 to 150. So who's working behind this idea? In 1911, the Solvay Corporation bought the top scientists in the world. That was Einstein, Marie Curie, and Bohr. Well, actually, Bohr wasn't alive then, but Planck and Ehrenfest, and they worked on the big scientific problems of the day. And what we've done for the last 3 years is to bring many of the top people in digital health into New York as part of the UN General Assembly. And we've been working on a new strategy, a new paradigm, a new agenda. We published a paper a couple of years ago about the digital transition of healthcare, stay left, shift left. And then last year we published something called the Manhattan Manifesto, which is 12 guidelines for governments. And if you think this just impacts government, it impacts everybody in the room. We think we can generate a new Moore's Law for healthcare, that we can add 2.5 years of healthy life to everybody in this room and everybody on the planet by using digital and data. So what is the Manhattan Manifesto? Well, unfortunately, that slide is not showing. But what it is about moving from illness to wellness, from hospital to home, from doctor knows best to patients know best. So in Europe, we spend 97% of our healthcare budget on illness and just 3% on wellness. So if you were a financial, portfolio manager, would you be still in the job if you put 97% of the funding into the worst performing part? Right now, as I said, we're finding disease very late. In the US, 90% of all healthcare spending is coming from chronic diseases, and we're detecting them too late, and we're acting against them too late. Today in Ireland, we can have better vital signs from a patient in their home than in their hospital bed. So many European countries have beds that are full. So if we could treat people in their home just as well as in a hospital, why wouldn't we do that? I just want to mention, if you're trying to transform an industry, you need a methodology. Transforming an industry is really difficult. I had the privilege of chairing the European Commission's Open Innovation Strategy Policy Group for 7 years. For 10 years, we conducted research on why was Apple successful, why was Google, why did Nokia fail, why did Motorola fail? And we looked at many, many cases around driving change in industries. And out of that came a book I wrote with Broer Salmon from the European Commission. This is a picture of a young Gordon Moore. I had the privilege of working with Gordon when I was at Intel. But the implications of Moore's Law are quite profound for every industry, but particularly for healthcare. So the unit of competition and the unit of performance is moving from the organization to the ecosystem. So it's no longer how good your GP is or how good your acute hospital is. Healthcare is a complex adaptive system. It's about moving from the product to the platform. And data-driven innovation is going to be hugely important for healthcare moving forward. Probably most important is we're moving from a linear to a non-linear world. And if I had longer to talk, I would talk about 10 Copernican shifts that are coming to healthcare. But this is the science bit. If you're going to transform an industry, there are a number of key design patterns you need to activate. You need a platform, you need to orchestrate an ecosystem, you need to industrialize the innovation process, you need to use agile production, you need to design for adoption because healthcare is really, really resistant to change, so you have to design 10x solutions that are so compelling and so easy to use that they get adopted. But the most valuable and the most important design pattern is the idea of data-driven innovation. So Vinod Khosla, he was a founder of Sun. He left quite early, and so Scott McNeely made most of the money out of Sun, but Vinod became a very successful VC. He said, but in the next decade, data science will do more for medicine than all of the physical sciences combined. But what we're witnessing, particularly in healthcare, is just this Cambrian explosion of data. 72 days to double medical data. What is happening is just absolutely phenomenal. But data is going to be the fuel that's going to make us all live longer and actually live healthy longer. So the economists, famous cover, data is the new oil. I had the privilege of working with Commissioner Gagan Quinn when she was appointed as the research commissioner. She said knowledge is the crude oil of the 21st century. Neither of them were quite right. Crude oil is certainly very valuable, but it's the refined oil, the refined data that is most valuable. Data is growing everywhere, but health data is growing the fastest. I personally believe the amount of data that we're going to generate, personally medical data, is going to increase 500 times from what we're collecting now. An example here, Intello Biosense, they're a startup company and they have a patch. Normally if you're in a hospital, you get your observations, your vital signs measured 4 times a day or 4 times every 24 hours. Technologies like this will measure it 1,400 times a day. The whole genome sequence is going to be really important. And on average right now, it's about 300 gigabytes per person. About 40 million people globally have had their whole genome sequenced. But when that gets to 1 billion or 5 billion or 8 billion, it's going to be a very big number. So today, as a person, there's about 80 megabytes on average of data generated per person, and it's mostly clinical data. But this is going to completely change. What's going to happen is patient-generated data is going to be 60% of all healthcare data. That's projected over a lifetime to be 12 terabytes. Today, the average hospital generates about 50 petabytes of data, but one patient is going to generate 12 terabytes per year. The genomic data is going to be about 6 terabytes, and the clinical data over a lifetime is going to be 2 terabytes. I was speaking to the speakers from Arvato beforehand, and what they talked about last year, discussion was a lot about strategy and regulation and legislation, and there's an awful lot going on. But this year, it's much more about business and real usage models, and I think that's really appropriate. So a lot of things that are going on, but probably the single biggest development, not just in Europe, but probably globally, is the European health data space. And this is a crucial development for all of us. First, it's about actually using data to keep us well, and that's primary use. And then the secondary use is to use it for research and to use it for policy making. This is absolutely going to need sovereign cloud all over it. It is going to be an absolute and complete requirement. And just thinking about, that we start with residency, and that is the most critical requirement, and everything that goes with residency, the privacy, the security, the operations, etc. Then we need the portability, then we need the operability, and then what both Laurence have referred to as open innovation. This sharing of data is going to be crucially important. And what happens when we put a data set around chronic disease with buying patterns in large supermarkets? We're going to get some amazing insights. The US has a major obesity problem. People talk about it as an obesity infrastructure. And if we think about our healthcare outcomes, just 10% is clinical care, 40% is down to lifestyle, nutrition, and exercise, 30% is genomics, 15% is environmental, and just 10% is clinical care. But each of us are going to be generating 500 times more data. I guarantee you in 5 years, we're going to have all sorts of Internet of Things devices. I personally put on a Dexcom. I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic. I put on a Dexcom monitor, blood glucose monitor. I changed my diet. In 2 weeks, I was completely normal because I changed my diet, but I could see what was happening to my blood glucose levels in real time, and behavior changes when you have that. So I want to give one example, dermatology and your data. This is a company in Ireland called AllView. What we're also seeing is a new paradigm that digital is democratizing innovation. So it's no longer a Philips or a Siemens who's coming up with the innovation. This is one guy, he had a dermatology problem. His sailing partner, who happened to be a dermatologist, said, "Oh, you need to come and see me." Took him 4 months to get an appointment, and the doctor, Rupert Barry, said, "Well, why did you come to? Why did you take so long?" That's my 2-minute warning. I said, "Well, I couldn't get to see you." So he had a problem. Thankfully, it was dealt with. So he started up a company. In Ireland, you have to wait 11 months to see a dermatologist. Now, with this service, you can see a dermatologist and get it resolved in 10 days. So that's a 10x reduction in wait time. By using digital dermatology, and what this company do is they take high-resolution digital images, send it up to the cloud, and they have a dermatologist panel that actually looks at it and gives a diagnosis. Dermatologists are 5 times more productive. Healthcare is one of the only industries in the world where clinician productivity, where worker productivity has actually gone negative rather than positive, and that's data from McKinsey Healthcare. So if you have a dermatology problem, you can get an appointment, you can be seen in 10 days, and everything is done and dusted in a month. In the first year of operation, they found 1,000 cancers, 100 of which were melanomas in the last 18 months. In Ireland, we have 1,500 people die a year from skin cancer. We think by using this service, we can reduce it by a factor of 10 to 150 people per year. So this is an example of a 10x technology, but this is really sensitive data. You do not want to be, storing this, and this company, of course, doesn't store this in just their bog standard hyperscaler cloud. It's all about needing a sovereign cloud. This is just an example. The hospitals in Ireland that have adopted this service, their waiting lists have gone down significantly. The hospitals that haven't adopted, their waiting lists go up. So this is a kind of a 10x technology, but storing very sensitive personal data that absolutely will need to be hosted in a sovereign cloud. This might be a bit dramatic, but I'm kind of getting there. Sundar Pichai said the artificial intelligence revolution is poised to be more profound than the invention of electricity, the internet, and even fire. And I remember when I saw the Mosaic browser for the first time, I had the feeling the world is going to change. Or when I saw ChatGPT, I know the world is going to change. So as we look forward, what's going to drive this revolution in terms of AI and healthcare and the ability to add 2.5 years of healthy life to everybody on the planet? Well, first, we've had a lot of innovation in deep learning architectures. Secondly, we've had the democratization, expansion of computing power and storage, the rise of the Internet of Medical Things. We're going to have all sorts of different devices. Ultimately, it'll all be miniaturized to a single patch that you'll wear in your chest. And now we've moved in just a handful of years in terms of blood pressure monitors to blood pressure watches, and now we have tiny blood pressure patches that can monitor blood pressure in real time. So it's all going to be miniaturized, but in the end, it's all about the data. And it's absolutely clear, from the European health data space, and even my own sort of as a person, I absolutely want my personal data. If I'm going to be generating terabytes of data, I will want that in the sovereign cloud. So I think the fastest growing and the biggest growth area for sovereign cloud is absolutely going to be health. And I think we're actually just at the beginning of the beginning. We're going to see a major shift in healthcare, and it's going to be moving from illness to wellness, from doctor knows best to patients know best, and from hospital to home. Today, 90% of care happens in the hospital. In the future, it's going to be 90% of the care is going to happen in the home, with us being responsible for our healthcare. How many of us would give responsibility for our bank account to our accountant or to the bank? I don't think we would, but right now, we give most of the responsibility for our health to other people, to the doctor. We know more about our cars than we do about ourselves. People will look back. One of my colleagues, John Shaw, says, in 5 years' time, people will look back and say, what were people thinking that we knew more about our cars than we do about our own health? So it's going to be really exciting. I think we all have the hope, using stay left, shift left, 10x, that ourselves and our children and our children's, they're all going to live longer because of the use of data, but what's going to underpin that is sovereign cloud. So thank you for your attention, and thanks, Laurent, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Professor Curley, Martin. It's always amazing how you can create such amazing and passionate story. We know each other since 20 years, and it's always a great pleasure. So thank you for that, and keep in mind that 10x better for 10x less cost. It's a very compelling story, and to do that, the sovereign cloud, which is a prerequisite, we discussed prior to this conference with Martin on the fact that we should find a way, and we will find a way, to organize something where all of you, being cloud service provider in Europe, sovereign cloud partners, can be part of the story. Because this is a huge increase of demand, 500 times the data, the personal data. Who is going to host 500 times what exists today in terms of personal data? You. And I think it's a great story to develop together now. So thank you, Martin.
Great. Merci, Laurent.